And welcome back to the conversation, the DMGB conversation, which stands for Doesn't Matter, Get Better. That is the philosophy that we live by. We have to find a way to get 1% better every day. And I am super excited to bring probably my second favorite bald man in my life onto the show because he's got big shoes to fill behind the other one. But very excited to welcome Corey to the show. Corey, welcome to the conversation.
Mark, how are you? And I'll never be able to fill Pop's shoes there. I got it. Mad respect for the old man there. And but thank you for having me. I will try my darndest to carry my weight for you.
I do a show with him every morning, so people get plenty of him, and I've actually already had him as a guest on the episode, or on the conversation. So we're good to go here. But cool. Corey, I know you. We connected through social media. You knew my dad, and I kind of make that point at the beginning of every show that I have because I've been bringing on so many guests who I connect with through social to drive home the point to people that this is the way people are networking. This is the way people are continuing to build relationships. And our conversation was amazing. So I'm excited for you to take our audience on the journey of who you are, where you came from, and how you got to where you are today.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's be clear. Strap in, hang on. It's going to be a bumpy ride right now. Man, I guess the short answer, or the way to kick off the story is I'm probably an ex-radio guy. I'm not an on-air guy, but that's where my roots came from. And I was lucky to land my first full-time job in the radio business in a major market in Philadelphia at the age of 19, which is crazy. Just through a chance meeting with a classmate at Temple University, and who I basically begged to get me an interview. And my first real-time media job was answering telephones for public affairs programming at 5 a.m. on Sunday morning.
And you loved it.
I loved it, man. I loved it. And, I had told the program director, who I met, a guy by the name of Tim Sabian, I said, man, I will clean the bathrooms with a toothbrush, brother. Just what can I do to get in the door? And then he handed me this, very low on the totem pole, under the totem pole, low end gig. And he said, I'm going to pay you exactly $0 to do that. And
for
free Sunday mornings for a 19-year-old. I mean, they're usually just getting to bed around 5 a.m. And here I am having to drive into the city. But I saw this as my opportunity because that radio station was the flagship station for Howard Stern in the morning. And they were bringing on the Philadelphia Eagles broadcasts there as well. And I said, I got to do it. And, I was working at bars Friday and Saturday nights till 2-3 in the morning. So you can imagine I work all night Saturday night till about 2:30, 3 a.m., go home, quick shower, maybe a nap, maybe a sandwich. And then I drive another hour, half asleep to go answer, phones for these knuckleheads, whoever's calling Sunday morning programming. And I'm loving every minute of it. But that was the springboard, because I got a chance to meet everybody at the radio station there. Chief engineer, sales managers, programming, production, everyone. So when it came time for me to get like a real internship, it was like, Corey, just bring the paper. We'll sign it. No interview. You're in. And then go ahead.
Before we go any further there, because I don't want to go to the springboard yet. I want to stay right there because when you and I connected and you told me that, there's very few people who I know who understand what it's like to get into something that you're passionate about and work for free because it's something that you want to do. Like I got into football and, I was in school. I was a college student still, but that was a means to an end. I was a college student because I had to be in order to continue to work for the team.
Yep.
If I could have failed right then and there, I would have, and just spent all my time in the stadium doing whatever was necessary, washing jock straps, fixing equipment, making coffee, running copies. I didn't care what it was. I was in an environment that I knew I wanted to be in, not necessarily because I knew I wanted to be a coach. I just knew that it was what I was passionate about and what I loved. So what made you passionate about radio that made you say, I have to get in the door in this building?
You know, I was a huge fan of radio just growing up. I grew up outside of Atlanta, and I followed the local radio there, and I used to imitate the announcers and make little tapes. Like, I didn't know that was making demo tapes back then. I didn't even know that was called. I had 2 old cassette recorders, and I would bounce back and forth and make little tapes. And I got to be honest with you, when I was 15 years old, true story, I had a friend of mine, good friend, and his father worked at the local cable access television station. I mean, it was redneck TV. Imagine in the middle of Stone Mountain, Georgia, public access television. And they were literally doing a shoot they were doing like an infomercial for like horse grooming products or something. And my buddy says, hey, my dad needs a little help. We need someone to help make sandwiches or something. And I went, and when I saw the cameras and the lights, I said, this is something I want to do. So he got me working at doing that first before I even, moved on to college and whatever. And I just had a fascination with it. I come from a family of big mouths. Both of my parents are pretty outspoken people, and were managers, were the shop stewards, were the head teachers, and that was kind of a little bit maybe just genetics. But I knew that I wanted to be associated with the media somehow. Like I said, originally on air, but even when I was a young kid, teenage years, 20s, 30s, I've always had, my mother would tell me, you always had vision.
Yep.
Like I always took care of what was in front of me, but I could always see 3, 4, 5, 8 moves down the chessboard to what the ultimate checkmate was. And I knew that, okay, if I got to nibble the S sandwich a little bit now,
sure,
I'm going to be smiling down the road. And I was always that guy willing to do those kind of less desirable jobs or sacrifice parties and friends and girls and that kind of thing, put those things to the side, knowing that I wanted to have a stable career. I wanted to make a lot of money. I wanted to have a family and all the things that come with having a family. And I thought this way as a teenager.
Right.
And I was very driven. And I just said, this is what I'm going to do. I figured out at age 17, I was going to hang up my spikes. I was a high school baseball player, was not really heavily recruited at that time to go anywhere. And even though I was very passionate about playing, I said, well, it's beer league softball from this point on. So I knew, okay, I got to go take care of myself and be independent. And I wanted to move out, all those typical growing up things. I just channeled in and focused on and said, what do I got to do to get there? And nothing was going to stop me, period.
That's really, so I know what it's like to then get in the door and be going through the grind and have all that happening and still have the vision of where you want to go, so that like it pushes you through that. You kind of get going, but sometimes your vision changes a little bit. Sometimes you get to a peek behind the curtain. And I think you said, your dream was to be on air. How did your vision change once you got in the door and you started doing? How did you then find your path, and how did your vision change, or did it change? No,
it totally changed. It made a sharp right, left turn, whatever you want to say, because, like I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of stability. I wanted to support a family. And 2 weeks into my internship at the radio station, the entire air staff gets fired.
Out, gone.
I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? And this was in Market 5, Philadelphia. I'm thinking, man, if they can just come in there with a snap of the fingers and blow out the entire air staff at Market 5, imagine what they would do to little old me in my first gig at a real radio station in Market 205.
Right.
They'll kick me out if the wind changes. So because of that, because I want to eat 3 meals a day, I said, what's the next best thing to being on the air? And that's where I discovered production. I met the production director at WYSP Radio, a guy by the name of Paul Turner, who at the time, 25, 26 years old, but born with this ridiculous James Earl Jones voice, was the voice of the Howard Stern Show. He was a kid. And me being 19, it was like he had like a frat brother to hang out with. And, I did the gopher stuff for him. I was like his volunteer assistant coach, right? I was getting him the coffee. I was getting his dry cleaning, putting gas in his car, typewriting letters and things, just doing any little thing to stay, in his orbit. And the cool thing that happened was, because I showed I was willing to do that, and he and I became friendly, he said, listen, I'm leaving for the day. It's 5 o'clock. Going to go home to my wife. He said, basically, here's the keys to the studio. Go teach yourself how to use the equipment. I mean, it was like, that sound at the beginning of The Simpsons?
Yeah.
Dude, that's what happened with me right then. I'm like, are you kidding me? I get to hang out as long as I want at a major market rate. We were in Infinity Broadcasting in Philly, and I got to come in and out as much as I wanted to, and I was learning and producing his voice for things. And then after a few weeks, however long it was, I can't remember exactly, he plopped down a handful of scripts. He says, I'm going to pay you $250 to produce these commercials for me. Now then, that was like Ed McMahon showing up at the door saying, I just won the sweepstakes, right?
Right.
I mean, I was like, $250? I thought I died and went to heaven. And that's kind of where it all began. As soon as I had that little sniff of a little bit of coin for doing this stuff that I had been doing for free and enjoying being where I was going to be, that's all I needed. I tell people all the time, my first full-time salary in 1994 was $14,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I thought I hit the lottery. I couldn't have been happier. 14 grand a year, brother.
So I'll do you one better.
Go for it.
Move that forward to 2009. Talking about 15 years later, I get hired as the assistant special teams coach at Florida State for $13,000 a year.
Wow.
And I think I'm like, I got a full-time coaching gig. You know what I mean? Like, I call my dad and I'm like, I'm getting paid. And he's like, well, how much are you getting paid? I'm like, $13,000. He's like, how are you going to live? Do
you have enough ramen noodles?
But to me, I had the same thought process. It was the same thought process. Like, I had been doing this for 4 years and doing everything for free, for nothing, just for the opportunity to be in the building and to be around and to learn. And the fact that they were going to pay me anything, I remember celebrating that night like I had made it. Like I was it. I had done it. I had climbed the mountain. I'm getting paid to be a coach. Forget it. Like
you arrived right then.
I arrived. There's exactly. Yeah,
I lived that, man. And I was, working in major market radio for, I was the right-hand man to Howard Stern's announcer.
So I have a question for you now, because this is more philosophical, because you and I understand what that feeling is like. Yes. And we also understand what it took to get to that moment. How do you deal with a lot of people that enter the workforce now out of college that feel entitled, that feel owed? And I don't like saying millennials, because you know what? It just depends on the person. It's not necessarily the generation. It truly is how you're raised, where you come from. But how do you teach somebody who has no idea how to have that perspective, how to have that perspective?
Well, that's something I'd like to think I had a lot of practice with. And I'll tell you why. Because I had the opportunity to meet this guy, Paul Turner, and he gave me a shot at such a young age. He kind of instilled in me, like, man, you better pay it forward. I'm doing you a solid. You had better pay it forward. And early on, as I became a full-time employee for him, we needed to have like a farm team, because we were going to grow. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
And I started pounding the pavement, going to colleges to talk to groups of students, whether that was a senior seminar class or a lecture hall full of media studies 101 of 300 kids. And the whole premise was, hey, I'm the cool young manager, and here's what it takes for you to get there. Now, I can't say that anymore, but that was the whole thing. And I spent 20 plus years all the time, 5, 6, 7 times a year, going to high schools and colleges and explaining to them what it really means to get a job, what it really means to work, what the difference is between a career and a job, what the difference is, what compensation is. Compensation is not always a dollar sign. There are other things that factor into compensation. And I would talk about those kind of things. And beyond that, just because of the way I was brought up to be very independent, to work your butt off, to not make any excuses, always show up no matter what. There was no sick. Wasn't any sick. When I was a kid, I was 8 years old. My mom put a couple of aspirin in tinfoil and said, get your butt to school. And that's how it was. Just, I was taught to be a hard worker. So knowing that that's how I was brought up, I have a severe allergy to complacency in my own life, with my kids, my 2 boys. They'll tell you they don't want to be anywhere near me if they're soft. And then to the people that have worked for me or anyone that I've met to try to either mentor or to have a group discussion, if I was on a guest speaking arrangement, they were going to leave that room knowing that here's a guy that is very anti sitting on your rear end.
Yeah.
So my whole approach is pretty aggressive, pretty animated, in your face. I was known to walk and weave in and out of the chairs in the classroom. I've had students, you always have a knucklehead that makes a smart aleck remark. I'd send them out or make them stand up with me while I did the whole discussion. So I would deal with them in a very unconventional way. And the teachers loved that because I wasn't an employee there, and it created accountability.
That creates accountability.
And I was able to sort of maybe get away with some disciplining that they couldn't otherwise do as a teacher. But I don't want to get off on a tangent. Sure. But my point is that you just can't be complacent. You got to get after it. You got to go get it. That's kind of where that started to convene.
Sure. And that's amazing that you spent time teaching that to people, because that was my joy as a college football coach, is I got to daily talk about that mentality with 18 to 22-year-olds to try to get them to understand that if you can adopt this now, if you can really make this part of your DNA, it will make you successful no matter what happens after this. Whether you go to the NFL, whether you go to the business world, whatever, it's all about the constant and continual growth. And some say it's improvement, but I worked for a coach who said it was CCI, constant and continual improvement. And I think that's what you're striving for. But if that's the goal that you set, that's not realistic, because you're not going to improve every day. Because sometimes improvement comes from failure, comes from a setback. It comes from, and so the idea that you're going to do this every day is not really realistic. You're actually going to fall down. You're going to fail, but that in turn will propel you to your next success if you're constantly and continually chasing it.
More like the stock market,
right?
Ups and downs. And there was like I said, I was an athlete in high school, and I still communicate with my high school coaches today, 30 plus years later, because there were very, very awesome influences in my life. And there was one particular episode that I think, looking back in retrospect, that kind of baked the cake 100% right there on the spot. We were doing some drills, and we were doing base running drills, and we were sprinting out doubles, and it was one, we'd go from home to second, and then we'd do second to home. It was like constant. And I was huffing and puffing. I was just sucking wind. We got to the point I rounded second base, and I, put my hands on my knees, and I'm bent over, and the coach said in this real gruff voice, he said, "Dissin, what's the matter with you? You can't breathe?" And I said, "Yeah, coach, I can't breathe." He goes, "Well, we will just stop practice for you right now." so you can catch your breath. I mean, it's very, very Herman Boone, remember the type moment, you know? And at that moment, I was like, you know what? The world's not going to meet me halfway on this.
Yeah.
I got to figure it out and fight through the pain. And that right there was a very physical pain. But all along, that turned into not getting a lot of sleep, or working 16 hours, or working Saturdays and Sundays, or hearing phone calls from my friends at the beach going, "Where are you, man? It's a good time." And I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm here working." And they laughing at me. Who's laughing now? Who's laughing now?
There you go. There you go. So you have this, and I can hear it from the way that you at a young age were talking to classes. You knew how to create accountability within a group of people. Where did that come from? Did that come from your parents? Did that come from playing sports? Where did you earn that accountability culture inside of yourself and know how to get it out of other people?
It's a combination of, I was actually yes to everything you just said. I mean, my folks were pretty strict. I mean, thank God they were. As far as attending school, you didn't miss school if you had a sniffle. I mean, you can't do that now for obvious reasons, but but back then, it's like your tummy hurt, you know, a little Pepto, get your butt to school. You got a headache, a couple aspirin, get your butt to school. There was no, oh, you got a B. There was no B. There's no B. I don't think I got a B until I was maybe a junior in high school. And I'm not bragging on that, but that was the expectation. No. My mother was a teacher, and you get your work done, and you are respectful to the teachers. And even then, if I had an issue with a teacher, I'm talking like as a 6th, 7th, 8th grader.
Yeah.
My mother didn't go to the conference. She told me I had to do it. She said, "You got a problem with the teacher? You schedule the conference and you talk to her." So that was, and my father was a very hardworking guy, you know, blue collar, you know, the short sleeve shirt with the tie, going to work every day, but hustled, you know, very tied to, you know, that very much was who he was, you know, being a good employee. And then, you know, like I said, these 2 high school coaches that I had that I still talk to today, you know, there was no substitute. It was like, you show up at the field every day. On Sundays, we were at the field cutting the grass, painting the dugout, picking up the trash, manicuring things. And there was no wiggle room. I'll give you another cool little story that kind of cemented how my brain has sort of formed. When I was a senior in high school, every year our team took a trip, several trips. We would go to Tennessee, we'd go to Florida and play in tournaments and things. And I had put some money down to go to Panama City Beach, Florida for spring break. And I couldn't wait, you know. Well, everything that goes was spring break at that time. My friends were all going. And the coach says, "Yeah, we're going to go to this tournament." And the tournament fell on the exact same dates as this, you know, this event in Panama City. So I went to my coach and I said, "Hey, I got to let you know that I'm due to go on a little trip for spring break. And it's the same time as our trip." And he said, "That's great, Corey. That's really good." And I kind of looked at him like the RCA dog.
Yeah.
He goes, "What's really good?" He said, "Just do me one favor." I said, "Sure, whatever you want, coach." He said, "Leave your uniform nicely folded in my office." And then he said, "I'll pick you up tomorrow to take you to Tennessee." And I had to ride with the coach to Tennessee, and I lost all that money. And the lesson there is you gotta, you know, be committed. You know, you got to have that commitment and that accountability. So by the time I got to college, I had already been, you know, hammered as a kid about being independent. I played for 2 guys who demanded the same of me too. And then when I got to college, my folks are like, "Oh yeah, you're a man now. Go, not only do you have to go and be a full-time student, go get a job.
Go figure out how to pay for your life."
Yeah, you want that. Now, I had hair at one time.
Yeah.
I had to pay for haircuts and gas in the car and car insurance. You know, so I learned real quick that there are 24 hours in the day, and you better learn how to use them all.
That's great stuff. And so now You're an unbelievable coach. And I use that term with you because to me, that is the ultimate term of endearment. I've worked in a coaching profession where not everybody who was called that word deserved to be that word. And I've seen the same thing in the corporate world. There's a lot of people who are called coaches that don't deserve to be called coaches, because to me, if you're a coach, that means you're a teacher. And to be a teacher is the most powerful thing that you can be, because it's truly developing people. So where did that become the passion for you? Obviously, you had a passion to help people early because you were telling young students about this is how to get in if you want to get in. But when did that become the focus of what you wanted to do professionally and transitioning out of the true production world?
Sure. So, I mean, I had been in the production world for 25 years, and, my kids were older. One had moved out already, had one on the on-deck circle, getting ready to go to college. And if even a couple of years before that, I started to think, I was not an equity partner in the production company that I was working for, which was fine. I wasn't upset about that. I was Michael Jordan. He was Jerry Reinsdorf. All good.
Yeah.
Happy with how that worked out. But I knew that there was no place else for me to go in that company. I was the vice president, I was a general manager. I was making mad bank, had a great salary. And as I got older, and this sounds so crazy for me to even say, because I sound like the old guy who walked to school. But as I got older, I started to figure out that there's more to it than the money and all the material stuff, time with your wife, time with your kids. And I'm watching, and I'm not a Cowboys fan, but I happen to be watching Jimmy Johnson. They were doing a little special on him on Real Sports. And he said 3 letters that changed my life. Because they asked him, because he's on a fishing boat, he was done coaching. And they said, don't you want to get back into football? And he said, nope. He said, I'm interested in QTL. And they said, what's QTL? And he said, quality time left.
Yep.
And there that Simpsons noise happened again.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I wanted the peace and the quiet and the calm and the being, like I said, being with my kids and seeing all the ball games and getting a chance to go out for a meal or have a drink with my wife. Though that became the focus. So I started to see the writing on the wall, and about July of 2018, I said, I'm gonna figure out this whole personal branding thing, because I see that, I do a lot of reading. I bumped into your father around that time, and I said, I never knew that it had a name. I never knew it was a thing.
Yeah.
And as soon as I figured that out, I said, this is my ticket. This is what I can do to build my own thing. Because, I didn't want to keep getting a pay raise at the production company. It just didn't seem right. And my heart wasn't in it anymore, to be honest with you. And I wanted something for me. So I built this thing up, and I put my name out there. I came up with a funny looking logo that I just looked in the mirror and traced them around my head. And took that and started telling people, hey, man, I've been marketing voiceovers for a quarter century, tens of millions of dollars of business doing it. Let me show you how I did it. And I started to pick up 1, 2, 5, 10. And then it turned into a little funny money to like a real life business.
Right.
And it all just kind of came to a head actually in this past July, 2 years later, that I broke away from the production company. I moved 400 miles away. I sold my 4-bedroom house, cars, motorcycles, I got rid of all the stuff. George Carlin used to talk about stuff. Yeah. I got rid of all my stuff, and we moved into a little 2-bedroom apartment in a small, tiny town in Southern Virginia. And I'm 2 hours away from my youngest, who's in college. And I wake up every morning. I have coffee with my wife every morning.
Yeah.
I eat lunch with my wife every day. I have dinner with my wife every day. I get to talk to my kids. I'm 2 hours away if they need me. It's quiet. It's calm. I'm kind of going all over the place here, but that's
this has been. Let me just tell you, Corey, this 30 minutes that we've spent together, and the nuggets that have been dropped about just doing anything to get in the door, seeing opportunity for the future, the power of having a vision, sacrificing to get what you want, what it really means to get a job, the difference between a job and a career, having no wiggle room, and the power of personal branding. That's what we've covered in 30 minutes. This is a master's class in life for people. So I hope that people dive into this and I hope they reach out to you after. I hope they try to connect with you, because I know how warm and welcoming you are, and I know how open to conversations you are. So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, it's shameless plug time here on the on the DMGB podcast. Forgive me for making it funny. I just couldn't help it.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Seriously though, CoreyDissin.com, CoreyDissin.com. But quite honestly, Google me.
Yeah.
If you type in my name and you can't find me,
something's wrong with your server.
What the hell have I been doing the past 2 years, brother? I'm on all the socials. And, in case you haven't figured out already, my moniker is the undisputed heavyweight champion of content. I'm out there. It's real easy to find me. And any friend of yours is a friend of mine. I will take good care of them, and I'll hustle, no doubt.
Corey, thank you so much for being on the conversation, sharing so much knowledge. I'm excited for you and your QTL that is on the way and in the future for you. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a mentor and somebody that I know I can keep in my circle. I made jokes that, your dad probably had an affair at one point, that we were probably
somehow. I just think that you're a kindred spirit. I'm lucky to know you and to be in your orbit. And you just know you need something, you give me a shout, brother.
Thank you, Corey. Fantastic conversation. And make sure you tune into the next one. Thanks, guys.